Hang on a second. I need you guys to take me seriously. There we go. That's better. Hi guys, welcome back to another episode of Crue Trime. Crue Trime.
Crue Trime.
My name is Sarah, and what I do here is tell you a terrible story to ruin your day and put on my makeup at the same time. Well, most of the time. If you're into crime, makeup, and a little bit of light snark, then you're in the right place. So make sure you hit the bell notification, subscribe to the channel, all that stuff, and then that way you will never miss one of my terrible stories. So last week's episode was popular. The Murdaugh, so many pronunciations, whatever. The double murder trial in South Carolina, super hot in the news, so I'm glad that I jumped in when I did. We've been trying to keep up with all your comments, and it's out of hand. It brought out the critics, which I expected, and, you know, it also brought out the crazies, which just makes me laugh. We could probably do a mean comments part 2 just from that video alone. So to that end, it seems like a good time to remind everybody that I'm not a professional. This isn't my full-time job. I'm not a criminal investigator. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a cop. What I am is nosy. So the information that's used in these stories is like whatever's available in public record. And depending on how deep you dig, you know, the information sort of changes a bit, and I'm not gonna get everything 100% right, and I'm open to being wrong. You know, you guys always have an open invitation to let me know when I've got my wires crossed. It happens. How else am I gonna learn? Okay. I always appreciate your feedback, especially when you're not just pointing out that you heard a different version from another YouTuber using the same source material as me.
We see each other. We see each other. We good.
None of what I say is meant to be definitive or critical or whatever. It's just my opinion, man. And it's for entertainment purposes only. So, this week's video. It's an update to a case that I covered about a year ago, I think. There have been some significant updates since the last time we talked about it, and I've been waiting until everything, you know, wrapped up before I got back to it. And guess what? We're finally there. This is the rest of the story of Kristin Smart. Okay, so I covered this case, oh my God, 2 years ago. So yeah, lots has happened since then. So I was rewatching the video that I did to prepare to make this video, and I hate it so much. I was having such terrible tech issues when I made that video. My microphone was like actively failing, and I wasn't able to refilm the video, but I just tried my best to fix the audio. It's not great. We're not perfect here, folks. And also, there are some things that I said in that video that I feel differently now that I have more information. So what I want to do today that I thought could be interesting and fun is I want to watch the video together and sort of react to it, and then I'll add in the rest of the updates at the end. Sound good? Okay, good, because that's what we're doing. So, here we go.
This is stupid. Why are you putting on makeup and telling these stories? This is disrespectful.
Okay, if you don't like it, bye. Okay. I have noticed in recent weeks, recent months, as our audience grows and there's more people watching, which is a good thing, there's an uptick in these comments telling me how terrible what I'm doing is and how they hate it and it's so disrespectful and all these things, and that's cool. My style of storytelling is not everybody's cup of tea, but you know what the great part about life is? You don't have to watch it. Okay, all right, hang on a second. Okay, so this was 2 years ago. Same. Something's never changed. I might end up skipping ahead of some stuff that's not relevant, so we're not just here all day. Because of a podcast called Your Own Backyard. A little bit of a disclaimer, and I don't normally do these with these videos because there's always going to be details that are left out for reasons. There's always going to be things that maybe I got not quite but 100% accurate. I try to always review police reports and court records to make sure that the timeline and the meat and potatoes of the story are as correct as they can be, but many of the details that I'm using in today's story have come from that podcast. I cannot recommend it enough. It is like chef's kiss perfection. Everything about that podcast is incredible. There are no other retellings of this story that are as accurate and detailed as that podcast, including today's video, Run, Do Not Walk. Go listen to that podcast. Hang on a second. Okay, so yes, this video was published on April 25th, 2021. And the podcast, Your Own Backyard informed a lot of the facts about this video, and about 2 months after I posted this video, the podcast released new episodes to cover the arrests of Paul and Ruben Flores, and some more information about Paul's history of being a creeper that I did not have that context at the time that I made this video. A team of rescue dogs, cadaver dogs, they were used in the search of the campus dorms. I think there was 4 dogs in this team. They went through several of the large buildings, and the technique was like a double blind. None of the handlers knew what the other handlers were doing, and nobody was telling each other if any of the other dogs had alerted. Okay, all right, so I just want to make a point here that cadaver dogs is not the proper terminology. These special doggos are human remains detection dogs, HRDs. We're just going to keep saying cadaver dogs because people know what that is, but HRDs are trained to detect human remains like blood, bones, decomposition. They will actually ignore live scents. So I said rescue dogs when I started talking about this. Different kind of dog. Those dogs are trained to find living people, and the dogs that I'm talking about are trained to find dead people, specifically. It still took police another 2 weeks to get a warrant to search his home, his father's home. And then it took him another week. This is the audio static. Okay, so like I mentioned earlier, I was having major problems with my microphone when I recorded this video, but I didn't know at the time. That's the bitch of it, is that I had no idea until I was editing the footage, and then it was too late, you know? So like there was no way to tell, at least not in my little ramshackle setup here, that there's no way for me to tell if the audio has some kind of weird interference. I can only see that it's recording it until I'm editing, until I'm editing later, and then it's like, oh God, I have nightmares about this now. I did replace my microphone right after this video. Okay, I'm skipping all that terrible audio. Oh God. And for every other question, he answered,
on the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
You don't want to say anything that might incriminate yourself. But they were asking him stuff like, when were you a student?
On the advice of my attorney, I refuse to answer that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
Where do you work?
On the advice of my attorney, I refuse
look at the
to answer
lawyer.
that question based on the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution.
So when you put all the pieces together, it seems to me that Paul took Kristin back to his room, take advantage of her drunkenness to rape her. I think that she came to and kind of realized what was going on and fought him off, and that pissed him off, which explains his black eye and scratches. I think she fought him off, but he overpowered her, probably strangling her or like hitting her until she died. I don't think he was like a predator searching for someone to murder, but I think he did it. Was I wrong or was I wrong? Wrong. So wrong. That's exactly who he was. Paul Flores was a predator who would seek out girls that had been drinking alcohol. He would slip something into their drink without them knowing. They would very quickly become super impaired, and then he'd make his move. So the people at that party that night said that they hadn't seen Kristin drinking enough alcohol to explain how she passed out in the yard that night. Also, there was an incident inside the party involving Paul and Kristin that in hindsight might explain some things. Like maybe she was starting to feel the effects and he was trying to position himself in such a way where he could maybe walk her out. Predator. Okay, I was wrong. Anyways, I think he called someone to help him conceal Kristin's body. I think he called his dad. What I suspect is that the person who was seen with Paul at his mom's house digging the holes and stuff, I don't know who that was. But I also think that Ruben knew that that person could be a liability, and they decided to relocate Kristin to someplace else. I think to his house, or maybe somewhere in the boonies where he worked. So in episode 10 of the Your Own Backyard podcast that aired again after I made this video, Chris Lambert interviewed some women that Paul knew back in 1996 from like Cal Poly days, and they described multiple disturbing incidents that happened around the same time that Kristin disappeared. So one time at a party, Paul had been trying to chat up some girl who was not interested at all, and another girl kind of sat down next to her in place of, I guess, where Paul was sitting, and Paul violently body slammed that girl to get her out of his way. He hit her so hard that her glasses flew off. She was like seeing stars, knocked the wind out of her. For what? For like getting in his way or cock blocking him, as he said. At a Halloween party around that time, Paul was asked to leave because he was being so creepy to the girls, and they got him outside by like putting the keg outside because he wouldn't leave the alcohol. And he just lurked in the bushes and was staring into the windows of the house like a fucking serial killer. And then this one is, this one's a lot. So at a party in the spring of 1996, Paul came out of the bathroom and shouted, "Hey, somebody come take care of this girl." There was a girl in the bathroom. Presumably they were doing things in there. She was nude, except for she had her bra on, and she was foaming at the mouth, vomiting. She had pooped herself. It was a bad scene. It was just really bad. So her friend was at the party, and this friend actually spoke with Chris Lambert for the podcast. And so she said that she went into the bathroom to help her friend, and she had just been speaking with her like less than an hour before. So you don't get to that state of intoxication that quickly unless there's some kind of accelerant involved. And here's another weird little nugget. While this girl is trying to help her friend in the bathroom, Paul comes in to take the trash out. Like, was there evidence in there? It's all very not good. The next day, the bathroom girl said it was definitely Paul that was with her in the bathroom. They'd only just met at the party, and he'd given her a drink. And listen, if you have not listened to that podcast, stop this. Stop what you're doing. Listen to it. It's so good. It's so incredibly well-researched, well-paced, well-produced, everything. It's so good. And it's so good, in fact, that public interest has gone through the roof. So the local sheriff and investigators had continued to work on this case over the years, but truly the podcast is the reason that the case was finally resolved. But we'll come back to that. And the interest turned the heat up on the Flores family too. Because of the interest in the popularity of this podcast, you know the Flores family is listening. And maybe they're even talking to each other. The Flores family, they were 100% listening to the podcast. So there's a recorded phone conversation between Paul and his mother, Susan.
The other thing I need you to do is to start listening to the podcast. I need you to listen to everything they say so we could punch holes in it. Wherever we can punch holes, maybe we can. You're the one that can tell me.
Why? What do you mean? How can he? Susan. On April 13th, 2021, just a couple weeks ago, Paul Flores and Ruben Flores were arrested. Paul was charged with the murder of Kristin Smart with no bail. 80-year-old Ruben Flores was also arrested and charged with accessory to murder after the fact, and his bail was set at $250,000. So in addition to the arrest for Kristin Smart's murder, Paul has several drunk driving convictions. He has a pending weapons charge and is being investigated for 2 separate sexual assault complaints. The guy was real busy over the years. The tricks that he learned at Cal Poly, using drugs and all that stuff on girls, he's been doing that for years and years. But we'll get to that. Guys, it is like this close. So it's done. Spoiler alert. The most recent search of Ruben's home reveals strong evidence that Kristin's body was there and has been moved. Because the ground penetrating radar can show you where soil has been dug up because of the way that it settles. Science. Okay, I don't know things. So it wasn't just soil disturbance, it was soil disturbance in the size and shape of a gravesite, and they found evidence of decomposition. It's getting a little graphic here, but our bodies essentially melt down after we die. All of your body fluids, organs, tissues, all of that just kind of melts like a pumpkin that you leave out on the porch too long. Do you get what I'm saying? I'll put up some pictures from the trial. They're not graphic or anything. They're just, it's kind of hard to see because it's a picture of a projector. But in the dirt under Ruben Flores' deck at his house, they found essentially rings in the dirt that show where a body melted into the earth. There was no body, but there was evidence that a body was there. A heme direct test indicated that the dirt was positive for the presence of human blood, but the blood was too degraded to be able to extract a DNA sample. And I think that's kind of as far as I'm able to get to the story here in this technically terrible video. So let's get caught up with what happened after. So like I said, I made this video in 2021, April-ish. So right as I made this video, Paul Flores was charged with first-degree murder, and Ruben Flores was charged with accessory after the fact to the crime of murder. They were both arrested and held in jail, and Ruben later bonded out when his bail was lowered, like I said. So the trial was moved out of San Luis Obispo County on the grounds that the media hype was like too much and Paul and Ruben wouldn't get a fair trial in the area. So they moved the trial 100 miles north up to Monterey, California. And here's the thing, the internet makes everything like immediately accessible. So I don't know what's the point of moving trials anymore. You can't escape public interest or access, okay? I'm just saying. So Paul and Ruben, wait a second. How did that happen? That's not Ruben. So like I say, Paul and Ruben were both tried at the same time, but they each had their own jury of 12 members and 8 alternates. By August 2021, pretrial hearings began, and they went on forever, like weeks. Paul's defense attorney, Robert Sanger, alleged that Chris Lambert, the podcaster, had made himself a witness in the case by gathering all the information in the way that he did. And by the way, Chris Lambert was making daily posts about the case as it went on, posting updates to Twitter and Facebook and the podcast website. Sanger tried to have him removed from the courtroom and tried to subpoena his documents. Like his recordings, his notes, his interviews, his sources, all of it. And many of the sources were not only anonymous, but had accused Paul Flores of various abuses. After that subpoena, Chris Lambert stopped posting about the case. The preliminary stuff for the trial kept moving along, and the judge ultimately decided that Chris Lambert's material was protected by the First Amendment and the Shield Law. So the Shield Law protects reporters, journalists, from having to reveal confidential sources. So on September 20th, 2021, Chris resumed reporting the pretrial hearings, including testimony from the San Luis Obispo Sheriff's Detective Clint Cole, one of Ruben Flores' neighbors, and a key witness claims that in 2002, Paul confessed to have buried Kristin near some skate ramp. These preliminary pretrial hearings and stuff were like a trial in themselves. You know, they went on for weeks. Witnesses testified. The attorneys fought to decide what could and could not be presented to the jury, like yada, yada, yada. The judge ruled that the prosecution ultimately did meet the standard for probable cause, and it continued. But unfortunately, none of the trial was televised. So there's no footage of any of it. Bummer. I know. But like the hero he is, Chris Lambert was in the gallery every day taking notes and turning that into a play-by-play of what went on each week during the proceedings. On July 18th, 2022, opening statements in the trial began for both Paul and Ruben Flores. The state's remarks were pretty much the same for both, but for Paul, it included the January 2020 phone call with his mom about the podcast. And we already know the story. You know, the party, the disappearance, Paul's mysterious black eye, all of the lying to police, the dogs alerting to the dorm room, and all the weird behavior by the Flores family following this, while the Smarts were doing everything they could to help find their daughter and bring her home. But some new things we learned in the trial. First of all, defense attorney Robert Sanger tried really hard to discredit the cadaver dogs, the human remains detection dogs. He called it junk science, hocus pocus, and he even tried to suggest that the dogs colluded with each other. Dogs. First of all,
How dare you?
how dare you besmirch the goodest boys and girls? Secondly, imagine it. The dogs going over their sinister plan while they're like playing poker. Dog poker.
Yeah, how do you know?
Major tell. Look at that son of a bitch wag.
That is ridiculous.
Damn it.
A witness came forward in 2019 through Chris Lambert's podcast, saying that in 2002, while hanging out with a group of friends, skateboarding, Paul Flores said that he buried Kristin Smart near the skate ramp. The defense tried so hard to discredit this witness, bringing up past drug and alcohol abuse and potential entanglements with motorcycle gangs. I mean, none of that is relevant, but all of that is relevant as to why the witness was afraid to come forward with the information to law enforcement. We learned that when Ruben Flores' home was searched in 2020, they found what was called a smorgasbord of Kristin Smart paraphernalia. Look at this. All the stuff was pulled out of a drawer, and it included all the letters that they had received over the years. Why hold those? So, do you remember back in 1996 when they searched Ruben's home? They had found some magazines and magazine clippings or whatever, which is weird, but this is the kind of collection of somebody with like a perverse obsession. Also, a former tenant of Ruben told investigator that they heard Ruben call Kristin a
dirty slut.
Which, you know, why would he say that of somebody he didn't know unless he knew that there was some kind of sexual component to what happened with his son? 4 days after that search, Susan Flores and her live-in boyfriend, Mike McConville, parked a cargo trailer alongside Ruben's house. They worked under the cover of darkness, like all night long, shielded from view by trees and bushes. They removed a portion of fence. Like, what were they doing? Why were they there? They moved her body. They moved her body. Where is it? Remember that initial search at Ruben's house was like the interior and just like looking around. They didn't dig up the backyard. Not yet. When Ruben's backyard was searched again a year later, this time they were using the ground penetrating radar that we talked about, and that's when they found the 6 foot by 4 foot disturbance, soil disturbance under the deck. By the way, the spot under the deck was the only soil disturbance in the entire yard, and the yard was huge. There was like a avocado grove. When Paul Flores' home was searched, I think he lived in San Pedro, maybe? This was in the months leading up to his arrest. Police discovered what amounted to evidence of sexual assaults. He had videos and photographs of sexual encounters, most of which seemed to feature women who were asleep or incapacitated in some way. Let's just say it, drugged. One photograph showed a close-up of a woman's face. Her eyes were closed, and there was a red ball gag in her mouth with like black straps across her face. Also, the bed sheets in the photograph matched the sheets that were on Paul's bed at the time of the search. So, Paul's defense strenuously objected to the evidence.
Your Honor, the defense strenuously objects.
They argued that it was unduly prejudicial and it did not present any evidence of rape or attempted rape. Oh, okay. Okay. The court ruled that the probative value of the photographs in corroborating the testimony significantly outweighed the prejudicial effect.
No, I strenuously object. Oh, wow.
That means that these photos support what was said on the witness stand. Witnesses to Kristin's murder? No, but witnesses to Paul's behavior. The experiences with Paul closely mirror what he was charged with in relation to this case with Kristin. A woman came forward talking about a sketchy sexual encounter with Paul Flores where she recalls kind of drifting in and out, but she definitely remembers a red ball gag being forced into her mouth. In 2007, a woman at a bar in Redondo Beach left her drink unattended while she went outside for a smoke. After she returned to finish the drink, she completely blacked out, woke up in a strange, dirty house, completely naked. When she was able to get herself together, she went directly to the hospital and a rape test kit was administered to her, and the DNA evidence that was recovered from her body matched Paul Flores. In 2008, a woman at a bar in Lawndale met Paul and he offered to take her home. She accepted, but instead he took her to his house. He offered her a glass of water, which she accepted, and then the rest of the night, she can only remember in pieces. She remembers a red ball gag being forced into her mouth. She remembers crying while being sexually assaulted. Later, she found a phone number in her phone that she did not put there. Guess whose number it was? Robert Sanger, the defense attorney, argued that the reason that the case had never been prosecuted for all these years is because there wasn't any evidence. He said, quote, "It's sad Kristin Smart disappeared, and she may have gone out on her own, but who knows?" He also told the jury that whatever they might think about Paul's alleged sexual assaults does not fill in the blanks about what happened to Kristin Smart. And oh my God, hold on to your butts. He said that Kristin Smart was engaging in at-risk behavior, like telling people she was a model when she wasn't, and getting into cars with guys. Wait. Why would it be risky to get into a car with a guy? Guys aren't inherently dangerous unless you're talking about a guy like your client, a guy with a long record of getting physically violent with girls and drugging their drinks and raping them. After a 3-month trial on October 5th, 2022, all of the testimony was over and each jury was given instructions. In every trial, the attorneys give some kind of analogy about circumstantial evidence so the jury can understand like what it really means, like in real life terms. And they tend to use the weather analogy. So like if you heard thunder and the sound of rain hitting the roof, and then you saw somebody come in from outside with an umbrella that was wet, you could put the pieces together that it's raining outside, even if you don't see it with your own eyes. In this case, the Deputy District Attorney, Christopher Puvrell, he used the donut analogy. A little boy's mom tells him, don't eat the donut that's on the table, and then she leaves the room, comes back to find the donut's gone, and the little boy has crumbs and, powder all over his mouth. The defense would say that the boy's sister has her hands behind her back, and there's powder and crumbs all over them, but there's no big sister here, is there? Because Paul Flores killed Kristin Smart. I don't know why that, tickles me so much, but... The donut thing, I mean. So with the instructions, the juries started to deliberate. Paul's jury had to be unanimous in their decision, either not guilty or guilty of murder in the first degree or guilty of murder in the second degree. And Ruben's jury needed to decide that Paul committed a felony, Ruben knew about it, and he helped him with the intent to protect him from the consequences. Which, that's exactly what he did. In my opinion. On October 17th, 2022, Ruben Flores' jury reached a verdict. And the next day, Paul's jury reached their verdict. The court decided to read them one after another on the same day. Ruben Flores, not you. Okay. Ruben Flores was found not guilty of being an accessory to murder after the fact. The maximum penalty that was on the table for him was 3 years, so whatever. I mean, we could argue that he spent the last 25 years dealing with the fallout from all of this and whatever, deservedly so. 46-year-old Paul Flores was found guilty of the first-degree murder of Kristin Smart. So hang on a second, hang on. How could Ruben be found not guilty and Paul be guilty? Remember, there are 2 juries. The trial is one trial, but there's a jury for each defendant. There's times during the testimony where both juries are present, or maybe just Paul's jury, or maybe just Ruben's jury. It really is kind of 2 different trials sort of happening together. I've been in a double trial before as a juror. Yeah, it's not great. Also, the attorneys for Paul and Ruben are not a defense team. In this case, they didn't even work for the same firm. They're representing 2 different clients and they have 2 different strategies. So the sentencing phase took months to get rolling. The defense filed a motion to delay the sentencing hearing. It was supposed to happen on December 9th, 2022. Robert Sanger claims that he had discovered new information since the time of the verdict. Okay. He also got started on a new trial, which was taking up a lot of his time and attention. So anyways, Judge Jennifer O'Keefe put her foot down and decided that there's not going to be any further delay. Sentencing was scheduled for March 10th, 2023 at 9 a.m. As predicted, Robert Sanger filed a motion for a new trial and another motion for acquittal. He argued that the state's closing arguments were confusing to the jury with regard to burden of proof, but the judge ruled that closing arguments are not evidence.
Your Honor, we renew our objection to Commander Stone's testimony and ask that it be stricken from the record.
Among other rulings, and ultimately, all the motions, whatever, were denied.
Move to reconsider.
Your objection is noted.
Nearly every Kristin Smart supporter in the courtroom wore purple that day in honor of Kristin. 7 members of the Smart family, including her mother, Denise, and a childhood friend, read victim impact letters in court, and an 11-minute video featuring highlights of Kristin's life was played. Kristin's younger sister, Lindsay, spoke of her sister, Kristin, and reminded the court and everyone watching of the sad truth.
He holds the key to all the answers of our family's questions, and he keeps us in prison from the truth and the closure about my sister's remains.
Once everyone was done, Judge O'Keefe spoke directly to Paul Flores and delivered the sentence.
Mr. Flores, you have been a cancer to society. In May 1996, you maliciously murdered Kristin Smart. You took advantage of her while she was in a vulnerable state. You volunteered to make sure she got home safely to her dormitory, only to take her life. For 25 years, you have lived free in the community, while Kristin's family has lived a nightmare. Your continued predatory behavior in the years that you were free, sexually assaulting women who were either drugged or intoxicated to the point where they could not consent. This predatory behavior has spanned your adult life. It is necessary to remove you from society so that you can no longer prey on and victimize women. You deserve to spend every day you have left behind bars. The defendant is statutorily ineligible for probation pursuant to Penal Code Section 1203E3, and probation will be denied. You are committed to the Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation as to count 1, a violation of Penal Code Section 187A, murder in the first degree, to the maximum sentence that I can impose by law, an indeterminate term of 25 years to life.
The maximum sentence was imposed, 25 years to life in prison without the possibility of parole. If you think you have any information that could help locate Kristin Smart and give the Smart family the ultimate closure, please contact the San Luis Obispo Sheriff's Department. I'll link that information down in the description box. And that is the update on Kristin Smart. So I didn't put my makeup on today when I was telling the story because there was just too much going on, like with the video starting and stopping and all that, but I'll link a couple of key things down below if you're interested. If you have a Crue Trime story that you want to recommend to me, there is a Google Doc down in the description box. Just click that link, fill out all the details. I would love to hear from you. Thank you so much for hanging out today and watching this video. I really appreciate it. If you want to see more videos like this one, then consider subscribing to this channel. You should. You really should. I upload new videos here on YouTube every week, and you can follow me on all of the other socials as well. That is it for now. I will catch you next time in the next video. Bye! Why the cat ears? More like, why not? Hello? There we go. Helps when the microphone's on. So loud, and it takes a full minute to cycle. Got lipstick on my teeth. Human remains detect. Saint. It's not saint. Anyways, Marie!